Iran has announced that their blockade of the Strait of Hormuz is over, at least for now. Maybe forever, maybe it'll be back on by the weekend, we're not sure. But the stock market is very excited, the oil markets around the world are very excited. And President Donald Trump is saying that beyond just that, we also will be retrieving Iran's enriched uranium, maybe in exchange for money, maybe not in exchange for money. There's a lot of lack of clarity about some of the details here, but we're gonna talk about it. But notice that I said that Iran's blockade of the Strait of Hormuz is over. Ours apparently is not. We are still blockading Iranian ships and ships affiliated with the Iranian regime from going through the Strait of Hormuz. And so we're gonna have all the details and the very significant points of non-agreement that remain. But Cenk, first, what are your 2 cents?
So there are facts in this case that make you believe that maybe the war is close to over. And then there are also facts in this situation that makes you think, oh no, we're gonna do a surprise attack tomorrow. So which one is it? Well, let John give you the facts and then we'll talk it through, because which one it is it just couldn't be more important. Because if we go back to attacking them, it'll be a debacle of epic proportions. And I've got it at 50-50, so let's talk it through.
Yeah, it's so funny because every development I've said feels like it's just a pretext for us to launch an invasion or something. This is the first time I wasn't going to predict that. And meanwhile, Cenk is pretty confident. So we'll get into the evidence. So let's talk about what the different parties to this kind of ceasefire/truce are claiming. And we're also gonna give you updates on what appears to actually be happening on the ground. So first of all, Iran did announce this morning in response to Donald Trump posting on Truth Social that they will lift their blockade of the Strait of Hormuz for the remainder of the ceasefire. It had already sort of been a part of the ceasefire that the blockade was going to be lifted, but in reality, it really hadn't been. So supposedly now it's double plus verified that it's going to be lifted for right now. But the ships are gonna have to take a coordinated route that Iran agrees to. And I've seen maps of how that route compares to the status quo before the war was started. And it is a longer journey through the Strait of Hormuz that sort of cuts between 2 Iranian islands rather than using like the vast bulk of the strait. I don't know why exactly that is or what that means going forward, but it is a change, so bear that in mind. Trump has also stated that Iran either already has or will be removing the mines from the Strait of Hormuz. And if I was the captain of an oil tanker, I would want to know which of those 2 it was before I started going through, because I feel like it's one or the other, and they're not the same vis-a-vis hull integrity. But anyway, so that's good news. We agree on some stuff. The blockade mostly is gone, although our blockade is continuing. So that's good. Bad news though, the IRGC does not seem to be happy about this. So they are not the ones that negotiated this. It's the non-Revolutionary Guard Iranian leadership. But the IRGC said that it would decide which vessels are allowed to cross the Strait of Hormuz, despite Iranian government pledges that their waterway has been unblocked, in a sign that the regime is currently divided, or that we don't know for sure who will have power coming out of this. And the issue with that is that they're the ones with the rockets and drones and stuff. So I feel like their input matters. Now, Trump has also claimed that not only is the status quo changed, that now ships can go through, but that Iran has agreed to never close the strait down again, which he has said, and I have not seen any indication that Iran has ever agreed to that, let alone the IRGC. And importantly, CNN is reporting like an hour before we're going live that ships are not moving through the Strait of Hormuz as of right now. And bear in mind that Iran has threatened to retaliate if the blockade that the United States is keeping on them were to be continued. And one of the best ways they could do that would be to close down from their end the Strait of Hormuz. But don't worry, Cenk, Trump is saying that they've agreed to never do that again. So why don't we cover the Strait stuff and then we'll get to the nuclear material after that. But what do you make of the situation with the Strait of Hormuz?
Yeah, so there's 2 different realities out there now. One is the mainstream media reality where they say the war is almost over, we believe Donald Trump. And by the way, it's not crazy to say that. If they were totally wrong, I'd just tell you, I'm not shy about criticizing mainstream media. But Iran did say they're opening up the Strait of Hormuz, so there is reason for optimism. So yes. I'm not totally dismissing that world at all. But part of that world, John, is, and we've basically won. They're going to end their enrichment program. They're going to open up the Strait of Hormuz. They're basically going to give us what we want. And then there's a second reality out there in this multiverse that we live in. And that one is, no, Iran has definitely largely won this war. So we've conceded behind the scenes and Trump is just doing bluster, right? There's actually a third reality, which is none of that is true. Both sides are restocking as we speak and re-engaging in the war is imminent, okay? So things are too complicated and nuanced right now for me to tell you, I know which world we live in, okay? So, and that's partly our job, but this is a very rare situation where it's muddled enough that it is not crystal clear. Normally everything's crystal clear. Who has more money, they win. Israel gets their way 100% of the time. We move on, we're right about it like literally every time because it's not complicated. This is complicated. So now my best sense is, I'll tell you what is not possible and what is. So Donald Trump saying that Iran has basically surrendered and they're gonna give up their entire enrichment program and they're gonna reopen the Strait of Hormuz and there's gonna be no toll and we get to block them anytime we want. That is definitely not true. Iran had the advantage. Like no matter what you think, if you think that Iran did not have the advantage before the ceasefire, you're living in la la land. It doesn't matter how many of their ships or planes or buildings we destroy, they have economic leverage through the blocking of the Strait of Hormuz. So, and you can't take that leverage away. We've tried 1,000 times. Doesn't mean that Iran won the war 100%, but they, like as an outside objective observer, they're winning 65, 70%. In that ballpark. So it makes no sense for the side that's winning and has more leverage to go, I surrender here, I'll give you everything you want. That doesn't make any sense. So that is not true. That is definitely not true. So that only leaves me two options, John. One is Trump's going, oh, we got everything, surrender, but in reality, we realize we lost and the oil markets and the stock market can't take this anymore. So we say, oh yeah, give us some enriched uranium out of the country, but mainly keep your program and reopen the Strait of Hormuz, don't charge a toll, and we're gone. And we'll give you a guarantee, we're not gonna attack you. We can't give a guarantee with the lunatics in Israel, but we'll do our best and we'll leave you guys alone. Don't forget, Noble Mobile saving you a ton of money. So a lot of people are signing up now and beginning to realize, what the hell, why am I paying so much to Verizon and AT&T? So your bill's only $50 a month, but it can actually be less because they give you money back if you don't use your data. So if you're paying more than $50, there's no reason to not switch. It's crazy not to switch because same phone, same number, same contacts, literally nothing changes. TYT.com/switch, TYT.com/switch. All right, we'll be right back. That's a possibility because then that's a deal Iran could live with, and then Trump thinks he'll just lie his way out of it and go, I won, you took the anyway, I won. Okay, so good. I hope that's I prefer that route because I don't mind Trump lying as long as the war is over, nobody else gets killed and we come home. The third possibility is, I'm so clever. I told him we had another ceasefire, but then this weekend I'm gonna attack them after the markets close. That is definitely possible. So which one is it between the last two? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating because it really does feel like every time there's big talks coming, other than the Vance one, that's just a pretext for an attack. And so it could happen. That said, I have predicted, the invasion of Cargill and stuff before and it hasn't happened. So I don't know, it's impossible to know.
Hey John, before you go on, let me just add to that, right? So I predicted ground troops. So if they don't do the ground troops and they get to a peace deal, I'm thrilled to be wrong, thrilled, right? So two more factors that are important here. I see online people who know military affairs, et cetera, and you don't know how much to trust them. They say every report they're getting from our troops is they're mobilizing. They're not standing still, they're not going backwards, they're mobilizing, right? So that's obviously super relevant. On the other hand, why the hell would the Iranians agree to open up the Strait of Hormuz if it's all a lie? Unless they got duped again. So, or unless they're restocking and there's reports out that they're buying extra drones and missiles from China as we speak. So just more information, but still gets to a stalemate on which of the two options it is.
Yeah, but again, I'm pretty sure Donald Trump in the last 48 hours said that China had agreed not to supply arms to Iran.
No.
And that's the only place I've seen that information is from his social media, not from,
No, he's
from
totally
China. So
lying
again,
about that.
there's no reason to trust any of this. But you've mentioned the nuclear program, so let's talk about that. Now, Donald Trump said that Iran has agreed to suspend its nuclear program indefinitely and will not receive any frozen funds from the US, which is an interesting thing for him to just come out and say as like the first information we would get about this. Like, what do you mean they're not gonna receive any you're just announcing this. Why would they be receiving frozen funds? Well, that's because Axios has a scoop that they're discussing a deal wherein they would get $20 billion in frozen funds unfrozen. So I feel like Donald Trump is just coming out and just lying, because that would be a very difficult thing to have the right acknowledge he's doing. It might be a very reasonable way. I mean, Cenk, you can agree or disagree, in exchange for the nuclear material. But that is also a thing that he and the right have attacked the Obama administration for a decade plus, because that was a part of the Obama nuclear deal, was returning some of their money to them in exchange for more influence over their nuclear program. And what do you know, after all of this, we might end up doing the same thing. But he's denying it. And so is he telling the truth? Is Axios lying, or was their source lying? Who's to say? But he's saying, we're gonna get it together. We're gonna go in with Iran at a nice leisurely pace and go back and start excavating with big machinery. We'll bring it back to the United States. And so they say in Iran that there's been no deal on the nuclear issues. But again, it is hard to imagine that they're agreeing, they're getting nothing according to Trump, no money. They're agreeing to never again pursue this, to give up what they already have. Yeah, maybe Cenk, maybe they're as desperate as Donald Trump would have us believe that they are, but that didn't feel the way it was going based on the situation on the ground.
Again, there's things we know and don't know. So the thing we do know is, no, Iran is not desperate. Iran is not going to do a deal where they give up their entire enrichment program. They open up the Strait. They don't get any money. They don't get any sanctions relief. Bessent is saying, no, we're gonna keep the sanctions on Iran. So Iran, if Bessent and Trump are correct, would literally get nothing, nothing. Why would they agree? No, that's definitely not true. There's no chance they're gonna agree to that, right? But the lie could be as cover for Trump politically at home. So he gives them $20 billion in frozen funds. He does sanctions relief. We do, a fig leaf on taking out the enriched uranium. We take out a little bit, but don't end their program. That's a deal that can get done, and that's a deal where the Iranians could get excited enough to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, and then Trump just tries to lie his way out afterwards to cover his ass politically and say, I won, everything else is fake news. Okay, no problem. And that still fits this same exact pattern. But it's also possible that Trump is saying all that stuff to the Iranians and thinking, moving in the ground troops as we speak. Don't worry, Bibi, I got this. That also fits the pattern. So buckle up and brace for impact this weekend, or maybe no impact.
It's really hard to say, because the market stuff, the polling stuff has been really bad for them. So he should be feeling a lot of pressure to wind this thing down. But also, is he gonna give up an opportunity to, have oil prices go up and down a few more times? Him and Barron Trump can make a few more $1 billion off of sleazy, corrupt bets. I don't know. I don't know why he'd give up that power.
Look, there's reports out again, and some say it's Barron Trump. I don't know. I can't. I'm not a sleuth enough in the markets to be able to tell if Barron Trump is doing those trades or not. But a lot of folks are saying, "Oh, you guys are such suckers." They know that once they say that there's a deal and the Strait is open, oil prices are going to plummet, market's going to go up. You can easily make those bets and make a ton of money. And there is one account that has definitely done that throughout this entire war. Is it Barron's account is the question, and we don't know whose account it is, but obviously someone's got inside information, they're playing the markets. Now, here's the second thing I wanted to add to that, John, which is that the markets are not markets are important after the fact. So if the war continues, the markets will crash, and then that will create leverage for Iran. So they're enormously important in that way. But as a barometer of what's going to happen, I know I can't use the R word, but the Wall Street knows nothing. They're total morons. They believe everything Trump says. And I can't believe how stupid they are. So I wouldn't trust the markets as a predictor of anything at all.
Yeah. Well, I will just say that maybe this is, I don't know, radical or whatever, but when there is finally some sort of responsible governance, I want to see a concerted effort with massive resources and funding to go in there, get whatever information you need out of financial brokerage firms, the prediction markets, and track down all of the people inside of the White House who have been obviously transparently doing insider trading. And we need these people locked up. I mean, we know it is dozens of people that have been doing this. And so I would love to see that locked down, because if you don't, then this is the new normal. Democrat, Republican president, it doesn't matter. They're going to manipulate the stock market. They're going to manipulate the betting markets to personally enrich themselves at a far faster rate than even their prior insane levels of corruption allowed them to. Nancy Pelosi is going to look like a reasonable investor compared to what will be allowed if there are not people thrown in prison for what we've been witnessing in the last year plus.
Yeah, John, super last thing for me on this. If you force me to go one direction or another, because I said in the beginning 50-50, I'd go 52-48 that all of this is a mirage. It's all a lie, and we're gonna reattack them. And so what's the thing that's tipping me over by a little bit in that direction? So actually, I had a third absurd thing, but the two were Trump in the Maria Bartiromo interview. Saying, look, oil prices could even go higher during the midterms, but the midterms are so far away. They're in November. So if Trump thought the war was going to be over in a couple of days, why would he be talking about maybe higher oil prices in the midterms? So that's a tell right there. Number two, if the war was going to be over, then that means they're not listening to Israel. And JD Vance is, as we're going to show later in the show, going and doing the Israel First Circuit and kissing every Israeli ass there is. So that's saying, hey, give us money, don't worry, we're still gonna do every war you want. Actually, the more I talk, the more I make it 55-45 that we're likely to attack. And then the final third one that's absurd is, this feels like the polls that Kamala Harris is gonna win Indiana right before the election. Like, my spidey sense is like, don't believe anything you're hearing now. It's a false, hope right before things turn into a debacle. So yeah, I'll land at 55-45. This isn't real.
I mean, one thing to consider is one reason Donald Trump might say that oil prices are still going to be super high come the midterms is to give a signal that the war is going to continue, to in the short term escalate oil prices, knowing that he's about to get a deal, so that he can then bet that the oil prices are going to drop and make more money off of that drop. I don't know. We should not have to worry about this from our government officials, but I think that we very reasonably do.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.